Da 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 da. And we're back for week 3, and it's Raceman Tim and Casey in his kitchen. Week 3, week 3, week 3.
I think that's my favorite one yet. I like the end where you repeated the week 3 thing.
I said it 3 times. Each week I'll say that week as many times as the week is.
I cannot wait for week 16.
12 days of Christmas.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, for week 3 picks. We're going to try and keep it a little bit shorter this time. We're improving every week, trying out new things. So bear with us, and we enjoy having you here, and we're glad you come listen. So without further ado, Minnesota travels to New Orleans to play at the Superdome. Casey, who wins and why?
Well, Tim, quite frankly, this isn't the type of game that Minnesota's won in the past couple of years. Anytime they've played an elite quarterback, it seems like their secondary, their pass defense has been very porous, and it's traditionally not the kind of game that Minnesota would go in and win, especially because the Saints are 20-4 in their last 24 home games. In 2011 and 2013, so last year and 2 years prior to that, they were undefeated at home. The Saints are 0-2 to start the season, both very close losses, both on the road. There is no way the Saints don't win this game. And it hurts me, it pains me, it aches my heart to say that, but there's no way Minnesota wins this game without Adrian Peterson, and obviously that's the topic of conversation. They most likely won't have him for the rest of the season. But no Adrian. I got to think that the Saints pull it out. I mean, the Saints' defense is bad. They have the worst pass defense in the NFL, but Minnesota's offense and their pass offense hasn't been good either. So I think that New Orleans' offense, which is tremendous, is going to be too much for Minnesota's defense to handle, and Minnesota offensively isn't going to be able to do enough, like I say, minus Peterson, to win this game.
What score?
30-17, New Orleans.
Oof.
It's going to be.
You should take that hat off right now. I don't think you should. I don't think you deserve to wear it. Where's your faith?
I like Governor Mark Dayton. Still support the Vikings.
All right.
What do you think?
You say Adrian Peterson's out, and that's going to hurt our game plan a lot. I know he's not the same caliber of running back, but it sounds like Mark Ingram, New Orleans running back, is going to be out as well. Now, if we look back, they are 0-2. I don't think this is the same Saints team that we've seen in the past years. You sound like a Packers fan. Living in the past, sure, they've been 8-0 at home the last couple of seasons, whatever. It's 2014. It's a whole new season. It does not matter. It's an aging Saints team. They're not what they used to be. You're right. Their defense is fairly awful. Flash Patterson. We got Greg Jennings. We have Kyle Rudolph. I do not think that they can defend those guys. I think it's going to come down to defense. I think our defensive line is going to be able to get to Breeze. I think it's going to come down to a shootout, and I would like to say that the Vikings will win that shootout, but they are not. I just don't think it's going to be maybe as bad as you think it is. It's going to come down to which defense can kind of slow down the offense more. Drew Brees is going to throw probably 3 touchdowns. Matt Castle might throw 2. Flash Patterson is going to do something. Our defense is going to have to score if we're going to win this game. They're going to have to improve much better than they did last week. Our special teams was awful. Defense was pretty bad. So we're going to have to work on that. All said and done, I say New Orleans wins 35-24.
Okay, so still a lot of points on the board, though.
I think the Vikings can score more than 17 points. We could score more than 17 points with Christian Ponder as our quarterback. Granted, we had Adrian Peterson, but that almost has to balance out the negativity and the positivity, doesn't it? Points.
Well,
not many points.
Granted, last week Minnesota didn't really have an opportunity to game plan without Adrian Peterson. They went into that game basically thinking that they were going to have him until Friday afternoon, and so that probably contributed to their just absolute demoralizing loss where they only put up 7 points. Yep. But I think the key is there enough of a rushing attack for the Minnesota Vikings to make sure that they don't become one-dimensional again. Because when they become one-dimensional, Matt Castle is not a good enough quarterback to win games in the NFL. They have to have a balanced attack, and I'm just afraid that without Adrian, they don't have that.
New Orleans has been giving up an average of 446 yards a game so far this year. Even the Minnesota Vikings can put points up on the board against that. And I think all it's going to take is another Josh Robinson interception or another pick six by Harrison Smith or a forced fumble by Everson Griffin. And if it happens early in the game and you take an 0-2 Saints team that's maybe already down on themselves a little bit, and just kind of, get that momentum going right away, I think we got a shot.
I hope you're right. The balance of the Saints terrifies me because in the past they've been a pass-only team, and they obviously have Drew Brees. They're sixth in the NFL in passing yards per game, but they're fifth in the NFL in rushing yards per game. And I know that 2 games does not make a trend by any means.
And now without Mark Ingram. So who's running the ball? Who's number 2? Can you name the guy?
Great point. Yes, I can. Pierre Thomas and Kyrie Robinson, because they are a team that runs the ball by committee. And so the first 2 games of the season, they've had at least 5 ball carriers each game, which is pretty amazing, kind of spreading it out, spreading the wealth. But they terrify me, their offense with both the rushing attack and the passing attack. I think it's too much, and nobody wins in the Superdome. Except for that year where Peyton got suspended.
Let's look at Pierre Thomas and Kyrie Robinson. Mark Ingram so far this season has 24 carries for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Right.
Not bad. 3 touchdowns, that's especially nice. Kyrie Robinson over the last 2 games, 14 attempts for 59 yards and 1 touchdown.
Right.
Pierre Thomas, 10 attempts, 47 yards, no touchdowns. I think it's clear that out of those 3, it might not be quite the committee that you think it is. It looks like Ingram is the number 1 guy, and I think it's going to hurt without him.
Right. That's a good point. Those guys, though, do each average over 4 yards per carry, which is kind of the, is it good enough? That's the kind of the number I use. 4 yards per carry, that's good enough. But I agree that Mark Ingram is kind of the man there, so losing him will hopefully benefit the Vikings.
All right, so we got our picks. Let's move on here. Next up, Green Bay plays Detroit.
All right, well, I led the last one off, so Tim, what is your impression of Green Bay versus the Detroit Lions?
Well, we have 2 1-1 teams going at each other in this game. I think it's probably going to be one of the better games in the NFL this week. I definitely plan on watching it. Should be good. 2 very high-powered offenses squaring off against each other. Divisional opponents. Should be a light show. I'm pretty excited. Green Bay's defense is awful. There's almost no other way to describe it. Last week, Detroit played a strong Carolina defense. They held Kelvin Johnson to 8 catches and a handful of yards and no touchdowns, and that is not Megatron-like. This week, he gets to go against a very soft Green Bay secondary at home. I think Kelvin Johnson is going to put on one of those performances that we're used to him seeing, something like 200 yards receiving, multiple touchdowns, and the Packers aren't going to be able to catch up. Their offensive line has looked awful as well, and Detroit has a defensive line with Sue and Fairley. I think they're going to get to Aaron Rodgers early and often. He's going to be harassed. I don't think their offense is going to get in that kind of quick tempo that they like. Eddie Lacy has been unimpressive this year. He has struggled against strong defensive fronts like Seattle and Carolina. He's up against another one in Detroit. I don't see any difference there. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch for us Vikings fans because we like the Packers, or we dislike the Packers more than we dislike the Lions. So I'm going to say Detroit wins 27-14 at home.
27-14?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'll say too that disliking the Lions would be like disliking an old blind dog because you just pity that creature. You've got no reason to dislike him. Um,
Do you think that's what
I
they say about us?
what's that?
Do you think that's what they say about us?
Dogs or lions?
Vikings.
Oh. I couldn't agree about the point of Green Bay having a horrible defense anymore. They are flat out bad. They give up about 30 points per game this season. It is 30 points per game this season through the first two games. Um, and obviously, Detroit is prolific through the air. Calvin and Stafford have hooked up for 247 yards and two touchdowns in two games, including a 160-yard amazing performance against the Giants at home. And they are at home. Um, but truthfully, they're the Detroit Lions. Their defensive performances in the first 2 weeks of the season, which haven't been bad, are a mirage. The Lions suck. They always do. They will find a way to lose this game. I guarantee you they have a lead and blow the lead because Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. And I don't like the Packers at all, obviously. But in the second half of that game against the Jets, the Packers offense got rolling, and I think that's the kind of snowball that's going to continue to roll and build into this game and trample the Lions like Mufasa.
I think they were down 21-3 against the New York Jets against Geno Smith. And granted, they did come back, but if they play like they did last week against instead of Geno Smith and whoever he's throwing to with the Jets, again against Stafford and Calvin Johnson, instead of 21-3, it's going to be 33-3, and they're not going to be able to dig themselves out of that hole.
I would love to see that. And I don't mean that from like, well, I hope they prove it. I mean that from, serious. I would love to see the Lions beat the Packers, but I just don't see it happening.
So what is your pick and score?
31-30. Green Bay wins on a Mason Crosby game-winning field goal.
That sucks. All right, next game coming up here. We have the
Third and final.
Chicago Bears at New York Jets.
Yep.
Who wins and why?
Well, I think that the Bears are one of the most perplexing, confusing teams in the NFL right now. They lose 23-20 at home against the Bills, who are 2-0. But it's a Chicago team that was at home to start the season. They should have won that game. Then they go to San Francisco. They get down 17-0. They have no business winning the game, and they somehow come back and win 28-20. Obviously highlighted by Brandon Marshall's amazing game. But they make me scratch my head, and I think what I've determined is the only thing that they do well is pass the football. They do one thing well, and it's pass the ball. And I don't think that that's going to be enough to go into New York and beat the Jets, because the Jets actually have a decent defense, as we know. Their offense is whatever, but I think the defense is good enough, and Jay Cutler makes enough mistakes that the Jets pull one out at home. I'll say 24-20.
24-20, the Jets beat the Bears.
Yes, sir.
Now you're talking about this Jets defense that had a 21-3 lead and lost 31-24 at Green Bay last week. Is that the defense you're referring to?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna have to disagree with you a little bit here, Casey. I think
Aaron Rodgers is better than Jay Cutler.
Oh, no question. I mean, don't get me wrong, he is, but Matt Forte is better than Eddie Lacy. Now, Matt Forte has been quiet the first couple games. I think he's due. I think you're right. They are the only thing they can do is pass. But the thing is, they pass to more than the receivers. They can pass to Matt Forte. I don't think the Jets are ready for the dynamic offense that Chicago can put on the field. I think Chicago has been through some growing pains this year so far. Like you said, losing at home the first game, but they proved last week at San Francisco. Was that San Francisco?
Yep. Well, yeah. Technically it was in Santa Clara, but
Santa Clara, yeah, the Santa Clara 49ers. That they are a good team, and they can go out there and beat the best teams in the NFL and the New York Jets are not one of them. I don't think the New York Jets are able to stay in games late. They were able to put on 24 points up last week, but 21 came in like the first quarter or the first half. I don't think they have the offensive capabilities to stay in there. I don't think Geno Smith can produce for a whole game. So even if both defenses completely implode, Jay Cutler is going to win that shootout. He's going to be able to. He has more weapons. They're going to score more points. It's not going to matter how good the Jets defense is because Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers might be better than Jay Cutler, but Jay Cutler is a lot better than Geno Smith.
But Mark Trestman is a bigger nerd than Rex Ryan.
Good. I love nerds. I'm a nerd myself.
He
So
thinks
go Mark Trestman. He's my champion.
Mark Trestman thinks the NFL is a video game. It's not a video game. You have to do more than just throw the football.
What about a video game? So Billy Bean with the Athletics, because he's or whatever, Jonah Hill, he's a nerd. Are you saying that what he did didn't work?
That didn't happen. Jonah Hill's character was based on not a factual person, but an amalgamation of people.
What was the word you just used?
Amalgamation.
Is that a word?
That's a word. Like several people, a blend of several people.
All right. Anyway, Chicago at New York Jets. Chicago comes in, proves that they are the team that we saw last week, not the team we saw in the first week. The Jets prove that they are the team we saw in the second half of last week, not the first half, and the Bears roll to a 21-7 win.
The only thing I agree with is the part where you said that Forte has been silent, because he has. He's been as quiet as a silent fart, and he's just been nothing but smelly through the first two games.
And that's how he's been for the past 5 years. So there are games where he won't show up, but when he does, he shows up in a big way. And I think it's going to be in a statement game on the road to prove that they are the team that beat the San Francisco 49ers last week.
All right.
All right.
Well, actually, you know what? This is the segment where we come up with an extra game. The extra game.
Normally we have 4 games because there's 4 teams in the NFC North. 2 of the teams play each other this week, so we're going to throw in another game, and just so happens we have a rematch from last year's Super Bowl. Denver plays at Seattle.
They do play at Seattle, Tim. The Denver Broncos play the Seattle Seahawks in supposedly a revenge game. What are your thoughts?
Well, last year on a neutral site, Seattle ran over Denver 43-8, and that was on a neutral site. Now they get to play them in Seattle at home, where Russell Wilson is 18-1 as a starter. They were 8-0 last year. They do not lose games at home. As much crap as people want to give of this 12th man business, it is real, it is powerful, and it works. Peyton Manning's going to go in there. He's going to throw his first interception of the season. It might just be one, but it's going to be enough to turn the tides. Seattle's defense is going to score. Russell Wilson is not the same caliber quarterback as Peyton Manning. I get it, but he doesn't need to be. They have Marshawn Lynch, and they have the best defense in the league. They have Richard Sherman. They're going to shut down whoever he needs to play, whether it's Wes Welker or Demaryius Thomas. They have a good tight end, Julius Thomas, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to go into Seattle and win. It's going to be a shootout. Don't get me wrong. Peyton Manning is still going to score points. It's not going to be as bad as the Super Bowl last year, but Seattle's still going to win 35-24.
35. You used that score twice, Tim.
Yep, it's the same score as the Vikings in New Orleans.
That's a popular score. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope one of two things happens. I hope that Peyton Manning either literally takes his socks off and puts them in Richard Sherman's mouth so that he finally shuts up, or I hope that somebody just slaps him in his unhelmeted head, because he is. I watched a thing on NFL Network, like him being mic'd up. He is, without a doubt, the most annoying person.
It sounds like you are advocating domestic violence.
I am domesticating that somebody slaps Richard Sherman, another man on the football field. So yes, I'm. What was the score of the Super Bowl, Tim?
It was 43-8 in favor of the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay, I'll say 43-8 Denver.
Is that your take?
No, they will not win. There's no way. But I'll say 27-24 Seahawks.
All right, I can buy that.
I don't have an actual take on the game. I just wanted to get those couple jokes in.
Well, I mean, it's a big game and it deserves mentioning when something like that happens. It doesn't happen often that they get Super Bowl as a rematch next season, especially against two teams that are honestly as fun to watch as Denver and Seattle. So I'd like to thank you all for watching us this week. Hope you guys found this interesting and kind of fun. And Casey, why don't you close us out?
Week three is